Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. A couple of days ago I put up the video which has the 10-year age gap, and on that video there was a battle request, a massive slugfest. In the 1910s there was a battle between the British Navy and the German Kriegsmarine, or at least that's the situation that we have on hand. Each fleet consists of 3 battleships, 2 heavies, 4 light cruisers and 8 destroyers. Now, the AI gets to design all the ships, but I'm going to take control of one ship, and that's going to be the battleship. Like, I'm going to be doing the design of the battleship and then handing it off to the AI to see how well the AI is going to be managing these. Now, since money is not really a concern, I'm going to go all out on the displacement. I don't really expect to need a lot of speed. Range is not important, survivability to maximum. I can go for turbines. Not really a problem with the engine cost, and the more acceleration and the more horsepower per ton I can get out of these engines, the better. Well, it's going to be probably semi-oil because it allows me a little bit more floatability and less ammo detonation chance. Although, what does this give? Oh, this actually gives better. But the funnel capacity could be worse. Okay, I'll stick to coal. If I can make that work, that'd be great. Forced boilers. Auxiliary 2 and shaft 1. Armor. Krupp 3. Let's go with barbette 3. Anti-torpedo 3. Double reinforced bulkheads 1. Anti-flood 2. And citadel can only be 2. An underwater protected deck. It's the 1910s, which means that the citadel 3, 4 and 5, so the armored citadel, the turtleback armor scheme and the all or nothing armor scheme, well, let's say they haven't been invented yet. Okay, now for the big question. What sort of guns and what sort of layout? The biggest guns I can put on this ship are 13-inch guns, but that doesn't mean that that's the right choice. As for torpedo launchers, I can probably only put underwater torpedo launchers with a massive range of 6 kilometers. Yeah, that's not really going to impress anybody. I might go with these, but only if my displacement is allowing that. Let's start with a primary tower. I'll go with an advanced tower tier 4. A rear tower tier 5. Put the funnel in between. A mega funnel would be ideal. Let's see, I also have an enhanced mega funnel. This is 24, 5, 30 and 50. The thing is, if this gets knocked out, I'm going to be losing a lot of engine efficiency. Basically all of it. So I could go with 2. That puts me at an engine efficiency of 100%. Let's say I lose 1. I still have an engine's efficiency of 100%. If I go with one of these, it's still 100. How much do I need? That's not something I've been able to tell. A large funnel wide? Ah, okay, a large wide funnel is not quite good enough. So maybe if I go with a large funnel... There, now there's 100%. So 2 large funnels should do the trick. And then set the secondary tower up right there. As for the guns, it's going to be important to have the big guns, the 13 inches. But maybe I can put those in side mounts. No, it doesn't quite fit. Not quite. Alright, in that case, let's go for a slightly more conventional design. That is, if these guns will fit. Yes, they do fit there, they fit here, they fit there, and they fit here. I have a 4 offset of 2.1%, which is perfectly survivable. Because I can still add secondary guns, and this ship has room for 8-inch casemate guns. The problem is going to be weight. This is not going to be easy. Maybe I need to save a little bit of weight on the torpedo protection. Let's go for torpedo 2. Anti-flood 1. That gives me a little bit weight more to play with, because I also still need to install some other systems. Let's go with an advanced radio telegraph to make sure I have more communications range. Explosive powder. What would be ideal here? I'm going for penetration, making sure I can do the damage. So maybe white powder is just currently the easiest way to go. This is more if you want to go for HE builds, which is not what I have in mind. I just want to go for sheer firepower. Heavy shells. I have a displacement of 27,000 out of a potential 29. I'm going to assume that this ship is the one that will take down the other battleships. That's the plan, anyway. That's the plan. It might not quite go down that way, but to make sure that I have the best chance of taking down the bigger ships, I'll go for 8-inch guns. And I still have a slight front weight offset. Can I put this gun a little bit further back? Yes, now it's down to 1%. Can I put the stern gun a little bit further out? Yes, there. The thing is, I still have a little bit of displacement left. Secondary guns. 8-inch. Can I fit those on the sides? Yes. Nice. I'll have one there. And one here. And now the ship does not support that. What if I go for a couple of 7-inch? These are lighter guns. Nope. Not doable. 6-inch. There. Now we have it. As for armor, 11-inch belt armor, 6-inch belt extended, 4-inch deck, 1.5-inch deck extended, 11-inch on the conning tower, 11-inch on the turret, 2-inch turret top, and 6-inch on the secondaries. If I can keep these things alive a little longer, that might help. But I'm not sure if this also goes for the casemates. I think the casemates are not considered secondary guns, but more just belt armor. So let's go for 6.5-inch secondary. And 11.3 for belt, and that's the best I can fit. Alright, this is the Markgraf. Good luck. You're probably going to need it, depending on what the Brits come up with. Now, for those of you who have not seen the previous videos, I'm going to hand over control of all the ships, all the divisions, to the AI. These make for interesting battles. So everything, put your entire fleet under control of the AI. Off you go. AI command is on. I'll try not to scroll through this list. Here on the left, the reports list, to allow for people to read those reports. I'll probably not zoom in on them too much, because for the moment I first want to figure out what sort of ships I have and what they are currently doing. Now all the ships are currently still following the Markgraf, which is shooting back already. So are the heavy cruisers. We got the Saxon and the Bavaria. 9-inch guns. And they have many bulkheads. That is good. They have a low top speed of only 18.5 knots. Armor looks... well, it looks to be alright, but a 0.4-inch armor... I'm not exactly sure where that is. That could be turret top, potentially. Also come with torpedoes at a range of 6. These are 17-inch torpedoes. Light cruisers. The Arcona, Strasbourg, Bremen, and Seeadler. 7-inch guns. 18-inch torpedo tubes. Mounted in a port and starboard configuration. And we have 3-inch secondaries. And then there's the destroyers. All of the destroyers. 5-inch guns and torpedo tubes of 18 inches. Let's see what sort of configuration they have, so I know what to look for. They went with single torpedo tubes. So I got one amidships and one on the stern, and that is all that these guys carry. Great. Well, it's a start, I guess. The Markgraf currently is on fire. Should be able to put that out pretty quick, thanks to maximum bulkheads and all the auxiliary damage control. Let's see what the Brits have, as far as I can tell. These must be their battleships. Ah, they did go for side mount guns. They did go for a lot of guns. They have no casemate guns, which is an interesting design choice. And they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turrets, so a total of 10 guns they can bring to bear. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to angle a little bit further away, but they might also get that other gun to bear. Now there are also smoke screens up here, so I'm thinking that a group of either light cruisers or destroyers is up there. Probably the lights, considering the amount of smoke. and then the destroyers would be behind the battleships. So far I have inflicted some hits, but all of those have been blocked by the enemy's armor, so it's not really that effective just yet. Saxon also has torps, by the way. I was checking why the heavy cruisers are pushing up so aggressively. Port, starboard, bow and aft. That's all. They carry 9-inch guns with a propellant of white powder, firing out to a maximum of 13,000 meters with a reload of 20 seconds. But keep in mind, these things basically, against larger ships, only have one available gun. One per turret. And then if they're sailing towards the enemy like they are now, effectively only one gun. Alright, what else can we see? This might be a heavy cruiser. Yes. Interesting. No, actually it's not a heavy, it's a light cruiser. Judging by its design. It's a light cruiser with potentially pretty good firepower and a lot of case-made guns over here. Identification is just beginning, so it's going to take a bit of time before we actually figure out what is what. So far we have a decent amount of damage going in on my ships. I am, however, doing some damage. I am hitting a warships, or a warship amidships. That must be this one. It's currently on fire. Has taken some structural damage, but otherwise is perfectly capable of shooting back. I wonder when the destroyers are going to be joining in on this fight. Oh, sooner than I might like. Here's a destroyer just now. That's a couple of really small guns here on the sides. They have port and starboard torpedo tubes. They have a double torpedo tube mounted amidships. And a couple of smaller turrets on the stern. This could be a very interesting encounter. The heavy cruisers, plural, are currently going after that lead destroyer here. That's coming a little too close for comfort. I still don't know exactly what it's made of or what sort of armor or armament it has, but at the moment the Saxon is probably going to be quite concerned. Oh, it's fired a torpedo. Interesting. Yep, that must be the port launcher. The thing is, at this day and age, with these tiers of ships and these tiers of accuracy, you're really going to be hard-pressed to try and kill a destroyer. Mainly your biggest weapon is volume of fire. Because the Saxon currently, with the big guns, has a 1% chance to hit. And with the 5-inch, it has a 1.2 and 1.3% chance to hit. So my chances to actually do damage against this destroyer are really not that great. The game seems to think it's a torpedo boat, but I know what this custom battle is made of, and it has no torpedo boats. It only has destroyers, at least of this size. As you can see, the cruiser is trying to do as much as it can, but it's taken on flooding damage. It's on fire. It has many bulkheads, and I hope that that's going to be saving it right now. This destroyer is still putting out smoke, which is not helping with the accuracy here. Let's see, so far I have really not done a lot of damage. 337. In the meanwhile, the battleship is hitting the Saxon and doing a lot of damage. 265 to the Saxon. We have something hitting a CA, so a heavy cruiser. I'm going to assume that's the Saxon because the Bavaria hasn't taken any damage. And judging by how poorly the Saxon is doing right now, I think she's going to go down very, very soon. She's still fighting. She's trying to keep the flooding under control, but it's probably going to be too late. It's also trying to fall back, fall on line behind the Bavaria, but it's just not going to be enough. This ship's going down. In the meanwhile, the destroyers have been identified. Fortunately, they barely carry any torpedoes. I mean, sure enough, they carry torpedo launchers, but they don't really carry a lot of reloads for those. They got 3-inch guns, 4-inch and 5-inch, but apparently the AI is so so low confident about their ability to hit that none of these guns are actually opening up. Or, and this could be another interpretation, the ship is having a hard time getting the guns on target. Ooh, that was juicy. Narborough just got hit. Ammo exploded for 883 damage. And the Narborough is now going to be hard-pressed to get that flooding on the stern under control before it's going to go and overwhelm the ship. And judging by the rate of flooding, I think that they have it under control. It does, however, make the destroyer awfully slow, and as such, very, very perceptive, or very much at risk of taking additional damage. Because it has no way of getting actually away from the battle, and its mace, there you go, ammo detonation. Its biggest asset is speed. Speed and the ability to just get out of dodge. Now, the Saxon at this point is alive, and it is still sending out torpedoes. I was worried for a moment that that was going to be an enemy torpedo. There is a couple of enemy torpedoes on the way, but so far it seems like the Arcona is steering well outside of the torpedo maneuver, so she should be fine. So first blood actually goes to the Germans. Contrary to my expectations, I might add. I thought that the Germans would first sink my heavy cruiser. As for the Brits, we have the Ramillies, we have the King George V, and the Mars. Everything's 13-inch. It has minimum bulkheads, though. Put these things on fire, hit them below the waterline, they are going to be hurting. So maybe the destroyers over here, the V8, V7, and V5, can do something with their torpedoes, provided that they are in range. Which I think they are probably not. And besides, they barely carry any reloads of their own. In this case, I would be very, very hesitant to be firing torpedoes. The Mars has taken some damage to the starboard turret. And it looks like it actually got destroyed. That looks like a very cooked turret to me. Is that accurate? I'm not seeing it rotate anymore, but it might just be on target. Alright, how are my ships doing? The Saxon has taken damage, as we know. The light cruisers are all fine. And they are trying to assist with their 7-inch guns. The destroyers, the lead destroyer group, under the current command of the V7, is trying to push into the heavy cruisers and potentially get some torpedoes away. Update, yes, it just got its torpedoes away. So it might be capable of at least forcing these heavy cruisers to turn back and rejoin their battleship. If I get very lucky, it's going to miss the destroyer and go, sorry, miss the heavy cruiser and go right for the battleship. Now this battle is still going to take a pretty long time, considering how much there still is left to sink. At this point, the Mars has taken some damage, presumably from the battleships. There we go, the battleship hit the stern deck extended plating for 181 and the mid-belt and actually penetrated it for 94 damage. My battleships mostly seem fine. And sure enough, the Markgraf has taken some damage, but the Weissenburg and the Wittelsbach are still perfectly fine. More fire landing on the Mars, doing some damage and bringing structural integrity down to 88%. Now, what are these heavy cruisers planning? It looks like they're trying to cut off the Markgraf. And they do have torpedoes, a couple of which might already be in the water. But without good sonar equipment, I won't know until they get really close, because you're going to have to rely on probably just eyeball spotting. The V7 has taken some damage and is currently on fire. Now it's flooding as well. It has taken rudder damage. It seems to be inside the smokescreen, but apparently that is not going to save it. Now these are very small destroyers, by the way. They're 1100 tons. That's a very, very low amount of displacement for these things. And I think that the V7 will not be able to fight all that water that's coming in. And if it is, then it's not the water that's going to kill it. It's the fire and the constant fire from the Antrim and the Edgar. V7 has damage to both engines. It's pretty much been flooded all the way from the stern to the midships. I think the only thing currently keeping it alive is the smoke screen, because the heavy cruisers can't hit it very well. But aside from that, if that smoke screen dissipates, we have one dead destroyer. Now there are still a couple of torpedoes on the way here. Judging by the maneuver from the Edgar, it might have spotted the torpedoes and is maneuvering to avoid. So I have very, very little hope that those torpedoes will actually do anything useful. In the meanwhile, the Mars is still taking a beating. It seems to still have all of its turrets, or was this the one that had... No, this was the one that had the cooked turret. The damaged one, although over here it's hard to see. It might very well be red, but it only sticks out so little from the schematic that it's hard to see. And again here, well, maybe guys who actually have color vision, and I mean, I don't have zero color vision, but I am colorblind, so it's not that easy for me to see. I think this turret, especially considering it's not rotating, is probably dead. Now the rest of the Mars seems to be on fire, but aside from that, it's not doing that bad. Interestingly, the V7, that heavily crippled DD, is alive. But it's only good as a gunboat now, because it just launched the rest of its torpedoes and is now out. No more torpedoes available. There is one enemy torpedo coming in here. That could be bad news for the cruisers. Let's hope that the AI actually spots that torpedo and maneuvers the ships out of the way. Oh! Oh, I missed that. The Mars took an ammo detonation and has been sunk. That is one of their 3 battleships dead. It seems like most of the ships, especially the battleships, have now changed their fire to the King George V. And considering the volume of fire that's going in, and the angle, or rather the lack of angle on the armor of this ship, it could start to take damage very, very quickly. I wonder what you guys think, by the way, about the AI's tactics. Would you say that the biggest threat currently are the battleships? So would you, if you had manual control of this fleet, first target the battleships, or would you first target the cruisers? Because I'd say that can be a case made for each. You could argue that the cruisers just have more firepower to overwhelm my cruisers. So I should be shooting the cruisers first, or rather the AI should. And then, when the battleships have taken severe damage, they're either potentially entirely knocked out, they're entirely sunk, or they have taken so much damage that their turrets are offline. In that case, it might be worthy just to ignore the battleships and focus on the cruisers then. So would you first take out the battleships, or would you first take out the cruisers? Let me know down below. Speaking of taking out battleships, the King George. King George has taken a lot of flooding, but it seems to have it mostly under control. I'm not seeing the lower half or the lower hull flood anymore. Now this is a perfect time to observe what this battleship does, and if it is at all capable of firing its guns. This was a question that was asked. Is a ship that's listing capable of firing its guns? These 13 inchers are reloaded. They might not be on target, however. So maybe the ship is trying to turn them around. But what I'm mostly interested in is, let's say the guns are on target. Can the AI still fire the guns? Can the ship still use those if it's listing this badly? Now, considering how heavily it's listing, you could say that the rest of the ship should also be flooding pretty damn soon, because it might just roll over to starboard entirely. Seems like the Germans are very much intent on getting rid completely of the King George. But so far, the King George seems to be disengaging. Another couple of misses. What is this thing doing? Can you fire? Hold on. This gun. Can you fire at this angle? Look at that, though. That is not good news for the King George. I think it might not be able to fire. Otherwise, this turret would probably already have opened up. Because this one seemed to be locking onto a target. It does have decent accuracy, so that's not it. The guns are swinging aft. Even this damaged one, and it's damaged, it's not destroyed. And of course my cat would use this particular time to chime in. Because it's been quiet the whole day. When I start recording my videos, that's the time when you need to start talking. Okay, I think that this battleship's not capable of firing due to the list. So making sure that a battleship is heavily flooded is actually another way of sort of, well, at least temporarily, taking it out of the fight. There you go, she's firing again. But she only fired when she had a pretty decent, stable platform. I mean, sure enough, it's not going to win any beauty prizes, but apparently it's stable enough to fire these guns. And the flooding at some point, or the floatability at some point, was down to 22%. And it's now back at 31. So I think that we can conclude that a ship that's listing heavily cannot fire. It needs to be stable. Now we just sunk another destroyer over here. This is the Nubian. The V5, however, might be soon to follow. The V3 has taken some damage. And apparently does not quite know what to do. It's still trying to follow the V8. The V8, I think, is falling back. I think the destroyers have done their job, setting smoke screens, launching torpedoes, and forcing ships to either evade the torpedoes or take them on the nose. That they might just try to retrieve or retreat the whole destroyer group. At least this group. No, actually it's this one. My bad. It's the group in the V8. The big question is there going to be anything that can be retreated? Because the V3 just took an ammo detonation, is on fire in several locations, and is now starting to flood as well. Floatability going down pretty quick. Alright, let's zoom out a bit. Our fleet seems to be in a bit of disarray. The Markgraf... Is the Markgraf falling back? There goes the V5. No, it's not falling back. It's still fighting. Albeit with a damaged spotter. So fire control has been damaged, and that means that accuracy is down. It has all of its turrets. Yeah, they are damaged, but all of its turrets are still operational. Wittelsbach. Fully operational. And the Weissenberg has also taken damage to its fire control. Accuracy is a little bit more fortunate thanks to closer proximity to the enemy. But the ship seems to be maneuvering and changing formation so that it's now following the Markgraf, and the Markgraf is following the Wittelsbach. This is now the lead ship because it's the healthiest one. As for their battleships, King George is still afloat. It has lost... What was that? The port gun that it lost? Yeah, this one's gone. That gun is dead. The other guns are very much alive and trying to pump out as much damage as possible. The Ramillies seems perfectly healthy. It's taken some damage, but overall it's perfectly fine. It has, I think, lost one turret, however. This one. This one's probably dead. So these battleships from the Brits, they have a lot of guns, they have a lot of firepower. But the big question is, can you bring all that firepower to bear, and when you start taking hits, does that firepower actually survive? And I don't really know. King George is once again the focal point of the fleet. What are the BBs targeting? Battleships are all targeting... No, actually. This one, the Markgraf, is targeting the battleship here. What are you targeting? If anything. Now keep in mind, you guys might be very easily seeing this red line, but I really have to strain my eyes to see where that line is going. Anyway, the Sheffield is now pushing in. The Sheffield has 8-inch guns, 3-inch secondary and 2-inch secondary. Ship configuration. It's one 8-inch gun on the bow, one 8-inch on the stern, and a lot of secondaries. It has many bulkheads and about 4.2 inches of armor at the max. with 93% more armor quality. That shouldn't be too much of a problem for the 13-inch guns, though. This thing is... I don't even know what the range is. Battleship? Range is 5 kilometers. So that means that if I fire 13-inch guns at 5 kilometers, I have an armor pen of almost 40 inches against the belt. And at this distance, I will not really have plunging fire. It's going to be right to the belt. Which means that this Sheffield just does not have the armor required to sustain hits from the 13-inch guns. But it comes with the smokescreen, and it's currently seemingly quite able to use that to maintain all of its health. Hasn't been hit once. V2 and the V4 are now pushing up. They still have some torpedoes, although they are reloading. The Tasmania has no torpedoes for one of its launchers. The dual launcher has just sent out a spread. To where, though? Oh, that's not good for the Tasmania. Tasmania took an ammo... Yeah, there you go. Ammo detonation and immediately sinks. And it goes down to heavy flooding. That was actually a hit from a 5-inch gun on the destroyer. That was the one that caused the ammo detonation. Now the Falknor has lost one engine so far. The V2, however, is now fresh out of smoke screens and has to start turning away from these torpedoes. Singular torpedo. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. It has enough leeway. And considering how many ships are currently targeting this destroyer, well, it is forced to return or start taking damage. Look at all that. That's impressive. Unfortunately, not effective. Yes, the Falknor has taken some damage and is currently in the process of damaging the V2. But it hasn't gotten out entirely unscathed. It's been flooded a little bit and it might not be as fast as it once was. It's doing 17.5 knots. We do have a fresh destroyer here, the V4. It is engaging the Falknor. The ship has guns of 5-inch and 3-inch. Why am I not seeing the 5-inch from the V4 and open up? Oh. It has two 5-inch guns, one on the starboard, one on the port. I think it might be maneuvering far too violently to actually get these guns on target. Because keep in mind that turret rotation back in 1910 was really not that good. So you took quite a bit of time getting your guns on target. I'm going to speed the battle up a little, because I am quite curious about how this is going to end. My battleships are all alive. They have lost one battleship, and the King George V is once again flooding and on fire. It has lost both engines. Can they get this damage under control? So far I would say yes, but it is diving right into a smokescreen set by that light cruiser. Which means that accuracy could be once again heavily impaired. And with that I might not be able to get the King George right now. How about my battleships? What are they doing? Ah, they're falling back! The Wittelsbach is heading out at best speed, which in this case is 24 knots. It is still trying to fight, but it has an accuracy of 1%. Leaving the damage to Weissenburg and Markgraf to still fight. But they cannot possibly keep up with the full health Wittelsbach, which has a speed of 24 versus 9.6 and 13.1. So it looks like the German battleships are trying to disengage. The heavy cruiser Sachsen has still taken heavy damage, but is still alive. Although it's now considered the main target for the British fleet, and is dead. Now, with the Saxon out of commission, I just lost eyes on everything. That was the most far forward ship. And with the light cruisers currently in the smoke screens, it's hard to see exactly where the enemy is and how far away they are. But at least I can tell you that the King George V is still alive. Light cruisers are now out of range. I still have a heavy cruiser left, but it's also out of range, and more importantly, it's running out of shells. It has only 58 of the 9-inch shells left, and after that, well, armament-wise, I could consider it a light cruiser, not so much a heavy. Although it is more heavily armored than a light cruiser. Now, I think all ships are in full retreat. The battleships are leaving, and since the Wittelsbach is the lead ship of the fleet, the V2 group is trying to follow it. So that's, yeah, that's this group. The V2 is currently the lead group, the commander for that particular division. So all the destroyers are falling back. The light cruisers are falling back. The heavy cruisers falling back. Yeah, we're just disengaging. Lost line of sight on the German battleship. It's hard to make up who won. I don't really know. The Germans kept all their battleships but lost a heavy cruiser. The British lost a battleship, so I would say that's definitely a point that goes to the Germans. The Germans, however, lost 1 destroyer and 1 heavy and kept all of their lights. So I think that this round goes to the Germans. Had I pursued that fleet, I probably would have won it. Considering that their destroyers are out of firepower, mostly thanks to their lack of torpedoes, so I could be pushing in with the light cruiser group. They still have some torpedoes. They still have those 7-inch guns, although they don't really have that much of an ammo complement anymore. They still have a lot of 3-inch shells, but they're not particularly accurate. And they're not particularly deadly, although they do fire Leadite 2, which is lethal in the form of setting fires. The Bavaria is using white powder, has 5-inch shells aplenty. Yeah, I think I could have done it, especially had the battleships just pushed in and sunk the British battleships. 1 died, 1 was heavily on the way down, the King George V, and 1 was, I think, down to about 85%, something in that region. So I'm going to hand this one to the Germans. Germany won this round. Doesn't mean they win the war, you never know. It's just one custom battle. Now, if you have a custom battle request, let me know down below in the comments. What age, so what tech level, basically. What sort of formation, so how many ships of what type. Battleships, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, destroyers, and I think I can also, yeah, I can also get battle cruisers and torpedo boats. So what I want you to know, or what I want to know from you, is who fights who, what age, and keep in mind that this can be different per empire or per contestant. So the Brits might be slightly farther ahead in tech than the Germans, but they might have a battleship less. You can set up all sorts of weird battle configurations. So let me know down below in the comments which sort of battle would you like to see. And if you see one that you think is really good idea, upvote that one. The more upvotes it gets, the more likely it is to become the next video. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I shall see you soon for more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts.